Everyone says you walk a lot in Japan, but is that really true? I've got step counts from 4 of my Japan trips. I've done spreadsheets and graphs based on my real life experiences as a tourist in Japan. After that, I've got some tips for you, including where to take a break because there aren't many benches in Japan. And please share your experiences in the comments and tell me if they're similar to mine or not, because everyone's different. So here's my step count per day for my Japan trip earlier this year. Every day I did between 12,500 and 26,000 steps. The average was almost 18,000, and these figures are from Phil's iPhone and Apple Watch. Now I think my step count's likely to be a bit lower than yours if it's your first trip to Japan, because I've been there many times. If it's your first trip and you're trying to do everything in Tokyo in just 1 week, you're likely to be running around trying to fit it all in. I've heard from other people that 20,000 steps a day is pretty normal, even 30,000, but of course everyone's different, everyone has a different pace and a different style of travelling, and it depends what you do. So in this example, the lowest step count was from our first full day in Tokyo. We took it a little easy. It was a rainy day, so we headed to Sunshine City Mall in Ikebukuro to spend the day indoors. We went to the planetarium, had a nice sit down watching that. Then we went to the observation deck and met our friends for dinner. So we hung out with them instead of constantly walking the streets. The highest one was also in Tokyo. I went to meet Japan Railways and film my Character Street video, so this step counts from Phil, it's his Apple Watch. He wandered around the Imperial Palace, Tokyo Station area. Then we met up and went all around Ginza, then took the metro to Toyosu for Teamlab Planets. After that, the queue for the bus was really long, so we walked from Toyosu to Monja Street for dinner. After that, we took the train to Asakusa and had an amazing evening at a bar in that retro shopping street that feels like it's from another time. We got the last train back to our hotel, so that was a pretty long day. It's interesting that across these 4 trips I looked at, the average number of steps per day is actually pretty similar. It ranges from just under 18,000 steps to 20,000 steps, which, when you're not used to it, is pretty exhausting. I didn't really notice a difference between Tokyo and other areas around Japan, so I think it depends more on what you're doing rather than where you are. But if you are staying in multiple places during your trip, when you've got a travel day and you're doing a long train journey, you do get a bit of a rest and a sit down on that day. We talked about steps, but how far is that exactly? Here's an example of how far I walked in miles each day. This is basically a Golden Route trip, which is the most popular itinerary for Japan that most people do, going to Tokyo, Kyoto and Osaka. This one's also got Nagoya and Kinosaki Onsen thrown in as well. The average was 8 miles, that's 12.8 kilometers per day. Each day was between 4.5 miles and 12 miles, and the kilometers are on the screen for you. Now that's lower than I would have thought from how it felt. It definitely felt like we walked a lot further than that. The lowest day here with 4.5 miles was a travel day, so we were on the train for part of it, and then we were staying at a ryokan, a traditional Japanese hotel with a hot spring bath. So that was really good for some relaxation in the middle of the trip. The highest, 12 miles, was a day trip to Kobe, which involved a hike down a small mountain. It was fantastic. There's a video on my channel about it, along with most of the other places I'm mentioning. If the video's not there yet, it's coming up. We also walked around the town and the waterfront quite a bit as well. 3 out of the 4 trips I looked at were 2-week trips, and on every one of them we walked over 100 miles, that's 160 kilometers, over the course of the 2 weeks. And actually on the last day of that Golden Week trip, Phil's knee gave in at about exactly the point we walked 100 miles. We managed to find a knee support from the pharmacy, and I was really worried about how we were going to take the suitcases to the airport the next day, but somehow he had miraculously recovered the next morning. Looking at the figures, the miles walked per day don't seem that high. In everyday life, I'll happily walk that far. I often walk into town to go out or go to the shops, and that's a 5-mile round trip, and I'll do that quite happily. So walking 8 or 9 miles over the course of the whole day doesn't seem that bad. But I remember on that Golden Route trip, by the time we got to Kyoto, I was feeling exhausted. I think it's because, depending on your lifestyle, you might not be used to doing that every day for 2 weeks. There are also a lot of stairs, I'll come back to them in a minute, and you're also on your feet for pretty much the entire day. The Apple Watch tells you how many hours you've been standing up during the day, so here are the figures for my Tokyo trip in September. We spent between 14 and 18 hours a day standing up. So even when you're not getting your steps in, you're standing, looking at things in shops, going slowly around an attraction, you're taking pictures, queuing at a restaurant, waiting for trains, or standing on the metro when there are no spare seats. You're on your feet for a lot longer than usual. I don't know about you, but I'm used to sitting down at a PC working for most of the day and then chilling on the sofa in the evenings, not constantly walking and standing on the hard concrete streets of Tokyo. And that is a lot when you're not used to it. If it's hot or humid, that can be even more tiring. And when I'm going around, I always get dehydrated and forget to drink enough water, even though there are vending machines everywhere. You also go up and down quite a lot of stairs, especially in Tokyo and other cities. Lots of things are above or below street level. Shops and arcades can be on multiple floors. And when you're taking the train, you'll be doing a lot of stairs. Here's the Golden Route trip. I climbed between 4 and 42 floors per day. That's an average of 19.5 floors, which is about a third the height of Tokyo Tower. The highest was that Kobe hike with a small mountain. The lowest was in Nagoya, where we spent most of the day at the train museum, which is only on 2 floors. After that, we took the Shinkansen to Osaka for the evening, and there wasn't too much stair climbing there. Another time, on a day trip to Kamakura from Tokyo, we climbed 29 floors throughout the day. We walked to see some temples and shrines, and I guess it was quite steep. That video will be coming up. You know, I always love walking around Japan. There are quite a few street walk videos on my channel, but even when you're taking the train when you're going around Tokyo, you can end up walking quite a long way, especially on the metro. Stations in Japan can be huge. It's not like in New York City where you go downstairs and the platform's right there. Sometimes you have to walk quite a long way to get to the trains. When you're changing lines, especially on the metro, I've found, sometimes you'll see a sign telling you how far it is to the line you want, and it's not unusual to see one that says it's 200 or 300 meters away. That game Exit 8, where you wander endless corridors in the Tokyo subway, is actually pretty realistic sometimes. And if taking the trains in Tokyo is something you're worried about, there is help with that in my guidebook, along with which tickets to get and how to get around the rest of Japan. My book has a lot more practical tips and help with planning than you'd usually find in a guidebook. It's not just things to do. The link to get it's in the description, along with lots of other things that have made good presents if you know someone who also likes Japan. So what can you do to make it easier? Obviously, having comfy shoes is really important, and make sure they're worn in before your trip. You don't want to get blisters. It is always worth packing some blister plasters just in case. For me, I wear Converse all the time. That's just what I find comfortable, but most people probably don't. You probably want a bit more padding than that. You want the comfiest shoes possible, and have a spare different pair so you can alternate. Make sure you also have some waterproof shoes with you. It can rain at any time of year in Japan, and walking around with wet feet is miserable. Now, there aren't many benches in Japan. If you're out shopping or exploring somewhere, there's often nowhere to just sit and take a break. When I'm in Akihabara, I always see tourists crouched along the side of the main street trying to sit on those little fences because they're exhausted and they just want to sit and chill. If your feet are hurting and you want somewhere to take a break, look on Google Maps for a park. It's not just the major parks like Shinjuku Park and Yoyogi. There are lots of really small parks around, and they often have benches. They might not always be very pretty, but they'll have somewhere to sit down. Department stores often have roof terraces that are free for everyone to use. Just take the lift up to the top, and sometimes there's even a view. If the weather's bad or it's cold, it can be a bit trickier. You can go into a cafe, obviously then you have to buy drinks, but sometimes that can be an added bonus. When I was in Hokkaido, it was the coldest place I'd ever been, and after we'd been outside for a bit, my hands and my feet would start to go numb, and I just needed to go inside to warm up for a bit. So we ended up going into a lot more cafes and bars than we normally would, and some of them were really good memories. A good option I've discovered more recently is the family restaurant. At most cafes, bars and restaurants in Japan, you're expected to leave once you're done eating or drinking. It's not okay to sit there for for too long after you're done. That's just the culture. A lot of places are quite small and rely on a constant throughput of customers, and there's often a queue of people outside waiting to get in. But that's not great if you just want to relax for a bit and your feet are hurting. That's where family restaurants come in. They're cheap chain restaurants that are often quite big, so if you want somewhere to just rest for a bit, go in and order the drinks bar. You get unlimited hot and cold soft drinks. You can also order snacks if you want to, and obviously within reason, it's generally okay to just hang out there for a bit. Obviously, if it's busy or there are people waiting, it's not okay to take up the table for too long, but if you can see there are free tables, it's okay to just recharge, help yourself to drinks, get hydrated, rest your feet, and figure out your plans for what you're doing next. We went to this Royal Host in Akihabara when we were feeling so tired in the afternoon. We had some drinks and some snacks. We bought our tickets for the Skytree where we were going next, and after that little sit down, we were feeling refreshed and ready to go. To find them, type family restaurant into Google Maps. Some chains to look out for are Royal Host, Jonathan's, Denny's, Gusto, and Caesarea, which is Italian themed, and that's the one that has 100 yen glasses of wine, which understandably aren't the best, but they're not the worst, although if you're a wine connoisseur, you might not agree. If you have any more tips, put them in the comments and tell me about your experiences walking around Japan and how you found it. Remember to check out my shop, my new stamp books are here, and I'll see you next week with more Japan videos every Thursday.